Yes. Okay, cool. So I'll start with my acknowledgement. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands in which I'm speaking today. So in my case, it's the Turrbal and Jagera people. I also acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which each of you are working from, and I acknowledge their continuing connection to their culture and pay my respects to their elders past and present. A little bit about QCIF. We're a not-for-profit dedicated to research excellence. Um, I can summarize this down into a lot less words. We're basically a research support and enablement organization. So if there's a shortfall in your research team, we can fill the gap. That's basically what we do. So let's start with the why. So why did we build KeyPoint? There's a whole range of reasons. Largely, it's because we're seeing an increase in sensitive data and an increase in interest from researchers about sensitive data, but a lot of places don't have access to the appropriate environments for dealing with sensitive data, which increases the risk of breaches and data leaks. And I'm sure you're all aware that when you try to deal with sensitive data, there's generally a long, drawn out, painful process of getting through all the governance hurdles and constraints from the different data owners, right? So particularly if you're dealing with state-based health bodies, it can be months or years before they will release data to you because of their concern about breaches and leaks. So we looked at a whole raft of different available environments, and while each of them does the job, there were some features that were missing from the various platforms, and so you know there was no one platform that met our feature set that we were looking for, so we ended up building our own. Of course, we've aimed, with the design, we've aimed to try and meet the 5 safes. So I'm sure that you're all aware of the 5 safes. So safe projects, people, settings, data, and outputs. That's part of our design. Uh, we're also working towards care principles. So we're engaged with a number of different groups for co-design in this space so that we can actually uh, embody the requirements from those particular Indigenous groups and make sure that the platform that we're offering meets the care principles. So KeyPoint itself, it's a secure environment for sharing, accessing, and analyzing sensitive data. And so for us, our key features include, strong governance and data for data custodians, secure remote access from anywhere to tightly controlled virtual desktops and collaborative analysis, a suite of analysis tools, and software, and a range of virtual desktop sizes and capabilities, allowing everything from simple analysis to data-intensive AI and machine learning applications. This is the slide I'll probably dwell on for a little while. This is the one about our governance model. And so this is where the mouse comes into play. In this case, we have our data owner or custodian. Most of the people that we're dealing with in this case are institutions, so universities predominantly. And so the data owner or custodian has a data sharing agreement with someone at the university, a data steward. Someone from the research community approaches them wanting to use that data. The university does its due diligence and says, yes, this person should be able to have access to this data, but we want to put it in a secure environment. So they talk to us. There's an agreement that's put in place, and we stand up. Oop, let's jump ahead. Get back to here. And we stand up a vault. At that point, we do an invitation for the nominated vault steward, which acts as a delegate for the data steward. So in this case, it's worth noting that the vault steward may in fact be the data steward, or in some cases can also be the data owner or the data custodian. You can have one or more of any of these roles. So you can have more than one vault steward if you want. The vault steward is basically there to provide oversight and also to manage the delegates. So in this case, you can see that we've got an egress reviewer, an ingress reviewer, and a vault manager. Again, you can see the S on the end. We can have many of these. The vault manager is largely the workhorse role. So the vault manager will create data sets, ingress data, put that appropriate data into the appropriate data sets, create the research activities, invite the researchers into those research activities, and then connect data sets with the research activities. So researchers in a given research activity will only be able to see the data sets that have been connected to that research activity. So there's complete separation of projects. So if you're in, say, research activity 1 and also in research activity 2, when you go through the interface and land on a desktop, you will only see the data for the research activity that you've selected the desktop for. So you'll only see, so for example, if you've come in on research activity 1, you'll only see the data for research activity 1 and not research activity 2. And if you come in as research activity 2, you'll only see that and not research activity 1. And that was one of our core requirements that wasn't entirely enforced in some of the other platforms. The virtual desktops are completely internet isolated. So once you land on that desktop, you can't copy and paste, you can't send email, you can't surf the web, you can't access external services. It's completely locked down. It's basically like a clean room, a virtual clean room. Nothing comes into the environment unless it goes through the ingress process. So if the vault manager or a researcher wants to bring something into the vault, they initiate an ingress process. It goes through a series of malware checks and scans, lands in an area that's visible to the ingress reviewer, who looks at that data inside the secure environment on one of the secure desktops. So unlike some of the other platforms where you send your data to a team somewhere at the provider of the platform and they look at it and then they put it in for you, in this case, the people who are inside the vault in those roles are reviewing what comes in, and you've also got egress reviewers that are reviewing what comes out. So it's a moderated gateway in both directions. I think one of the things that's worth noting here is once we invite the vault steward in, we basically hand over the keys. Right, so we don't see the data, we don't moderate the ingress or egress, we don't set those rules. They're all governed by the delegates in the vault. So you get to define your own governance rules about what's allowed in and what's allowed out. The technical mechanisms allow you to make those decisions, but the actual governance model that you want to say this is what data is allowed in or out, or files in or out, that's entirely defined by the people who have requested this vault. So that's a little bit different to a lot of other places. So it makes it scalable for us. It means that we can create vaults and not have the overhead of having to manage those vaults. We manage the infrastructure and the platform, and the actual day-to-day running of the internals of the vault is done by the people within the vault. All right. And egress is basically inverse. A researcher will create an egress request. They load their files, they submit it, it lands in an area that's visible to the egress reviewer on a virtual desktop. They review it. They get all the same tools as the researcher, so they're able to open up scripts, see what they're doing, whatever else. And then there's a decision by the egress reviewers as to whether that data is allowed out. So nothing gets in unless it's approved, nothing gets out unless it's approved. Right. From a system architecture perspective, we use AAF for credentials. One of the reasons that we use AAF, and you'll see that when I log in, is that a number of institutions have rules for their researchers that effectively state that they have to use their institutional credentials when working with research data. So rather than us forcing you to take a new login for KeyPoint, you use your existing AAF credentials. If you don't have an institutional login, we can then mint you a virtual home login once we've verified that you are who you say you are and that you have the appropriate permissions to be coming into the environment. So we create a virtual home account for you. So I will be using my virtual home account, so you'll get to see that today. And this is just a different view of how this works. So you can see you've got a portal. Once you're in the portal, you get to the Vault portal. You'll see all of this. And you've got your VDIs, you've got ingress and egress, and you've got folders. So for each user, we have personas, and those personas have a roaming profile on the virtual desktops. So it means that when you log out of a desktop, we save your roaming profile. And if you come back in and choose a different desktop from the list, it doesn't matter. It'll load back up all of your files in your desktop the way it was before. So you can vary between very small VDIs and really big, heavy duty VDIs, and your environment will feel the same. So from a more technical perspective, KeyPoint is, I like to describe it as an event-driven state machine. Effectively, it's a whole series of subsystems or microservices that are passing messages between them to enact different behaviors. And so we've got secure messaging and isolation. So each vault is its own little ecosystem. About the only thing that comes out is the action log. So we capture that in an audit log. So all of the different things that people are doing inside of KeyPoint are captured so that you can go back later and run investigations if necessary, or see who's been accessing what or doing what inside the environment. The next slide is somewhat more technical. This is the sort of more nuts and bolts view of what's happening under the bonnet. It's running at the moment. It's running in a restricted region of the Nectar Research Cloud. It's called a restricted region because Nectar is a federation of state-based clouds. We run the Queensland node of Nectar at the moment. And because of that federation, normally any administrator in the country can look at your hardware and the data and the services. In our case, we've built a special restricted region within our cloud, and only the people we authorize to be able to access that area can, which means that it's isolated from the rest of the federation. So it's a restricted region. That's largely the slide deck for the moment. So I will stop share and then I will reshare my browser so that you can see KeyPoint, and I'll run through a fast demo of KeyPoint unless people want to stop and ask questions at this point, but otherwise I will run KeyPoint for you now.
Yeah, I think just keep going, Peter. That's very interesting. We'll keep the questions to the end of the session, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine by me. Okay, so I'm holding my breath. Nectar as a platform nationally yesterday had some issues with the network, and it came back online yesterday afternoon, and I checked this morning and it was working. As I said, we're running on top of Nectar, so this should be a nice smooth demo, but please bear with me if there's underlying issues with the Nectar Research Cloud nationally. Right, so I click log into KeyPoint. It says, I don't know who you are, because every layer of KeyPoint checks. So it's checking who I am. In this case, I'm going to use my virtual home account because I'm coming in as my QCIF persona. Because that doesn't ask for multi-factor authentication, we enforce our own multi-factor authentication. So normally if you were coming in as someone from a university, you would select your university, you would log in through your university portal, right, which may in fact have an MFA, but we don't get that information back from AAF at the moment. So we have our own MFA on top of that. So regardless of whether you've gone into your institutional one and said, remember my MFA for 90 days, you'll be doing an MFA on the way in. Right. And that's the reason we do that. So I'm just going to get my code. Oh, I wasn't quick enough. So let me go back. I was a bit slow because I was talking too long. We have a 30-second timeout. It should come straight back to here. Okay, so I was quick enough this time. You can see this is called the chooser. The chooser offers me vaults that I have access to. In this case, we're going to go into the demonstration vault. You get to see our very messy demo vault because we've given a lot of these. Again, this layer, we've moved into a different portion of the system. It says, I don't know who you are. You can see the spinning here. It's checking. So it goes back upstream and says to AAF, hey, who is this person? Here's the credentials they're presenting. And it comes back and says, yes, this is this person. So you can't bookmark your vault and try to bypass the login, right? It's going to check you. If I had tried that, it would have passed me back to the login because it would have passed up to the chooser and the chooser would have said, I don't know who this person is. I'm passing you to AAF, and it would have gone to AAF. If I'd have been logging in as say UQ, I would have then gone off to UQ, and the whole process, it would have passed back down the chain and then let me in, right? So you can't try to bypass the login mechanism. Because this is a demonstration vault, I hold all the roles. All right, so I have all the roles in this vault. Normally you will only see the roles that are relevant to what you're doing in the vault. So if you're a researcher and only a researcher, you wouldn't see any of this. You would just have my research activities. So the platform manager's role is basically to invite in the vault steward. And the vault steward's role is effectively to invite in the different roles. So you can see vault managers, ingress reviewers, egress reviewers. I can also, with a lot of these things, if I come in as a vault steward and I go manage delegates, I'm able to suspend or delete people here. So I'm not going to be mean and get rid of Mark. You can see him on the call here. But I could suspend him or delete him. You know, the reason you might suspend someone is that they've gone on leave for an extended period or a sabbatical, or they're doing something inside the vault that you think breaches your governance process and you want to run an investigation. So you can come in and then suspend their account. It means that when they log in, all of the appropriate options disappear and they can't enact that particular role in the vault. I won't go through the invitation process. It's a bit convoluted. So the way the invitation process works, I'll open it up so you can see what it looks like. I guess that's probably the easiest way. If I was to start a new invitation, you can see I select what role that I want people to be in. I can only select the roles that are appropriate from my role to do. I put your name, your email, and a message. What that actually does is it's going to generate an invitation link. And you can also use this to generate the email that you send. Now that email basically says you're being invited into this vault in this role. Please go off and do this training. So we've got a training site that you need to complete and set up an account. And once that's done, we approve you for the platform. And then you log in using your AAF credentials, accept the invitation. That comes back to the person who's done the invitation. You can see that we can check, here's who we invited, here's who accepted. And the approver will then come through and say, yes, I think that this person is in fact this person, approve. Or, hey, this doesn't look right. I'm going to ring them up or I'm going to email them and check to see who they are. If you think that the wrong person has accepted the invitation, you can reject it and reissue a new invitation. And the reason we've done that is you will have some people where they'll get invited and it will end up landing in someone else's inbox or in a shared inbox that someone else is managing. If they click the link and accept it on their behalf, the credentials are wrong and we'll just reject it, or you can reject it. So it's an extra check. So again, create the invitation, send the email, person does the training, creates their account, accepts the link, it then gets double checked by the person who sent the invitation and approved. So I could do it, but it takes a little while. I'll move on to Vault Steward. So from Vault Steward to Vault Manager. Okay, so you've got managed data sets, manage research activities, manage members. The Vault Manager can ingress data, and they do that so that they can populate the data sets they've created. I will do one of these for you now. Right, you can see I've done a few of these demos. So let's create a new data set, and we'll call this unlock EOP. If you have a DOI, you can add it. You don't have to, that's optional, but we will capture DOIs. Because it's the demo environment, it will take a little while for this to catch up with me. So it's creating at the moment. So effectively what's happening is this is building some folders in the background. I'm a bit impatient. As you can tell, the live system runs faster. The demo system has less resources, so it runs a little slower. While we're waiting for that, what I might do is jump in here and show you managed data sets. Right, so let me clear this. So while we're waiting for that, let's have a look at this. For a data set, I can link that to a research activity. So we're going to update this and change the word link to connect, because we've had some people who think that this is data linkage rather than just connecting one thing to another. So if I open this up, you can see that for this particular data set, I can select which research activities can see this. So what that means is that if I'm creating a new data set, I can come in and say, okay, I've created this new data set. I think it needs to be visible to this one, this one, this one, and this one. Conversely, if I come back as the Vault Manager and I go to manage research activities, you can see there's a list of research activities. I can create a new research activity. I won't do that today. It's pretty much the same thing. I can come in here and work in the other direction. So if I've just created a new research activity, rather than have to go through every data set I want to connect and connect it individually, I can just come in here and say, for this research activity, I want to see these data sets. And I can turn that off if I want and save it, and that will make it not visible within that research activity. So I'm going to come back to manage data sets. It's now available. So you can see here that it's available. Again, suspend, delete link, right? So I've created that data set. It's basically an empty folder on a desktop that's visible to the Vault Manager at the moment because it's not linked to anything. As part of KeyPoint, you can also request a database that matches this. So when you create a data set, it will spin up a new database that matches that label. So you can have the folder and a database. That's doable. If I jump onto a desktop now as the Vault Manager, so it knows that I'm coming in as a Vault Manager, you'll see that in a moment. So you can see that I've selected that desktop as a Vault Manager. So my persona as a Vault Manager is now being logged against that activity. So it knows that I've done this as a Vault Manager. So we get our desktop. And if I go to data sets, you can see all the different data sets, and there's unlock COP. and it should just be an empty folder, which it is, right? So out of habit, I will sign out. So I'm going to switch gears. I'm going to come in now and say, I want to bring some data in. So I'm going to create a new ingress request. Let's call this unlock demo. And I create a new ingress request. So again, we've got this creating. And so what's happening at this moment is there's a folder being created in the staging area. There's a folder being created in a quarantine area, and a folder being created in the ingress review area. All the appropriate permissions are being set. And that's now created. All right, so what I can do now is I can come to this and say, I want to manage my files. So I'm going to add a file. Go to my desktop, which is full of screenshots. I usually have one on here. We'll use the MARTA test file, right? So I have this one. You can see this is a demo of Ingress for MARTA. I add it in and I upload and save that file. So we've got an upload limit set at 10 gigabytes. We can make that higher, but it gets horribly slow with really big files, but we can make that as big as you need it. Generally, most other platforms have a restriction at 1 gigabyte. We can go bigger. We have gone bigger. We find that about 2 or 3 gigabytes is a good size. That's where you can see the progress without it looking like it's dead. So I've put my test file in place. I'm happy with it. I'm going to submit that for review. Now you'll see that it tells you I'm going to submit it for review. Once you've submitted it, you can't modify the files, because I could go back in and add more files right now if I wanted to, but I'll submit it. So what happens there is that file was uploaded to the staging area. It's now been moved across to quarantine. The malware scanner kicks in, takes a look at that file, makes sure that there's nothing in the file that's untoward or inappropriate from a malware perspective. If it does, it gets rejected, and that's the end of the process. But if it passes that, it gets moved across to the ingress area. So you can see now that the status has changed to reviewing. So if I come across now as a reviewer, so I'm going to look at ingress reviewer, you can see that here is that ingress request. So as a reviewer, I can say, I want to check that file. I inspect it on the desktop. So normally this would be a different person, right? So the reviewer is now landing on a desktop. And you can see it knows I'm coming in as an ingress reviewer. So I've switched from one desktop to another with a different set of folders visible to me. I think one of the other things that I'll point out here as part of this is that when I open up the File Explorer, if you take a look, this is where those files have gone, but for every role that gets a desktop, there's one of these folders, a Z drive. What this Z drive does is it means that if I'm an ingress reviewer and say Roger is also an ingress reviewer in this vault, this is a shared folder that both of us can see. So it means that if, as part of our governance process, we need more than one person to approve or keep a record of who's approved what, we can have a file in there that you can use to effectively collaborate and communicate within the vault. All right, so you're able to say, I've looked at this person's files, I'm happy with them, and then Roger might come in and have a look, and he checks and goes, oh yes, Peter's already said he's happy with them. I'll have a look. Yeah, I'm also happy with them. So then he goes, approve. All right, and it gets recorded that way. But the actual staging area is here. And you'll see that if I have a look, there'll be an unlock in here somewhere. Let me sort them by date modified. There it is. And there's our MARTA test file, which I can then open. And I can see that this is here. Now here's the key bit. If I try to modify this and go and I try to save this, it goes, no, you can't save this. So any data that's coming through ingress review is read-only. So it means that your ingress reviewers can't modify anything that's coming in. Likewise for egress reviewers, everything is read-only as well. Right, so I'm happy with that file. It's nothing that breaches our governance. So I would go back to the Vault portal at this point. And I say, I want to run my review, and I can write a whole bunch of comments. In this case, I'll just write approved, and I'm going to approve it. So that now disappears out of my list of reviews to approve. They're gone because it's been done. And if I go back and switch hats again to Vault Manager, because the Vault Manager was the one that did the ingress request. It's processing. So what's happening is files are being moved and permissions are being set. As I said, it's normally faster than this. I find this frustrating in the demo environment because it's a little slower than the live one. Okay, it's now approved, right, and processed. So it's passed through, it's ready to go. So if I now come back into the desktop for the Vault Manager, pick the person who's done this too many times and knows exactly where to put the mouse for the folder. All right. If I now go to downloads, there it is. Right. So I'm now able to open this up and go, let's make a copy of this file. I'm now able to modify the file. Right. And the reason we've done it that way is if you're a Vault Manager and you bring in a complete data set that you then want to cut up into smaller data sets, you can bring your stuff in as a single ingress, make multiple data sets in the interface like I showed you, cut your data up appropriately on the desktop, put it into the right folders, right? And then connect those folders. So I've made a copy. I'm going to go to my data sets. I'm going to go to unlock COP and drop that file in. And now we have MARTA test file in that particular folder. So as I said before, you can see there's a collaborative Vault Manager folder here as well. So sign out. So what I will do now is I will switch, well, I'll use the Vault Manager just one more time, and then I'll switch hats. So I'm going to manage that data set. I'm going to find it in here. I'm going to link it to a research activity. Now I know that I'm in this particular one, demo research activity. So I'm going to link that, save it. Right. So if we look at it now, you will find that it's connected. It's been connected. If I switch hats now and I come in as a researcher, I can launch a desktop here. So I can also egress and ingress files, but I will launch a desktop as a researcher. And you can see it's picked up that I've come in as a researcher. And in this case, it knows that I'm a researcher in that particular research activity. So when I come in here and I look at data sets, I can see what's been connected to me. I can see unlock COP, and there's the MARTA test file. Likewise, I come in here and I'll go, let me modify it. Aha. And I try to save it. And it says, no, you can't modify it, right? I can make a copy and modify the copy, but I can't modify the exemplar data set. So it means that the data set is shared with me, but I can't then go in and damage or modify that data set because that data set may be shared to multiple research activities. So it's basically pristine. So I think the next thing, the only thing left to show you is, well, you've got a whole bunch of things here. You've got, yep, there's a hand.
Hi, Peter. I know we're saving questions to the end, but two are very specifically related to this ingress process. So I wonder if we could take them very quickly. Is that all right?
That's fine.
Jintan, are you there? Jintan was asking around the ingest area. Is that how you'd also ingest software and code as well? Is that the right question?
Yeah, hi Peter. It's Jim from Monash. I was just wondering because you showed the data set. I guess you try to understand what is the data set.
Yeah.
So let's say the users need a software. Do they bring that in through this portal as well?
So if I flip back to the Vault portal, if I'm a researcher, I can also do an ingress request. So I don't have to bring data in. I could bring in script files. I could bring in other bits and pieces, maybe reports, additional data, scripts, code that I've written. All of that can come through as an ingress request as a researcher. It's one of the reasons that we provide the ingress reviewers with the matching tools that matches what the researchers have. So that if you're, for example, one that's quite popular in KeyPoint is R scripts, people will bring in R. As an ingress reviewer, I'm able to fire up RStudio and examine that code and run it and see what it does before I approve it. So it's already been scanned for malware, but it's also allowing ingress reviewers with the appropriate skills to take a look at code and check to see what it's meant to be doing before it comes into the environment.
So if it's a new software, do they have the sysadmin access or privilege to install software?
So if you're bringing in applications that you want installed on the desktop, it will fail because you will not be able to install on the desktop, right? If you're bringing in standalone scripts, that's different. They will run. But if they need something outside of the desktop, it's not going to get an internet connection. If you want specific software installed on the desktop, we will do it for you, basically. So you tell us, we need this particular application available to the researchers in this research activity, and we then go in and add that to the image for the VDI and make it available that way. So you can bring in scripts that will run standalone, you can bring in reports, you can bring in data, you can bring in papers, you can bring in all those things. But you can't bring in installable applications.
Yep. Okay, understood. Thanks, Peter.
And
Yep.
Peter, there's another question around notifications. Are alerts sent to let people know that approvals are needed or have been received?
So in this version of KeyPoint, the notifications haven't been finalized yet. We are working on that. It's really just a case of the ingress reviewer logs in, takes a look, and says, "Oh, okay, there's some outstanding reviews. I'll do them." Right. The way we normally tell people to do this is if you have an urgent ingress or egress review, you submit the review, and then you contact the delegate and say, "Hey, I've done this request. Can you approve it?" Because generally they know who they're talking to. But otherwise, it shows up basically in their to-do list.
Okay.
They come in, they check the to-do list and go, "Yep, I'll do that one, that one, that one, that one." Later on, we're adding notifications. There'll be a notification thing up in the corner, and there'll also be the system sending emails or potentially SMSs if necessary to say, hey, there's been a request that you need to deal with.
Yeah, yeah. And while we're in the ingest area, Kerry was asking if this is automatically cleaned up after a period of time, or is that a user task? She's just curious about version control of files when you have multiple people working on the data.
So that's an interesting question. So we will hold those files in the review area for a while, but they stay there for the duration of the vault generally. So that you can go back and see what's been brought in over time. From a version control perspective, that's really up to how you run your vault. So one of the things we've suggested to people is that we've installed Git, right? So Git is built into the desktops. You can build a local Git repository in the collaboration folder, and that allows you to track stuff that way. But you don't have to, right? That's probably not the answer that you're looking for. I'm not quite sure what you mean by version control of ingressed files, but we hold on to all of the ingress requests for quite a while, so that we can go back later. If you say, who brought this in on the, this was brought in on this date, what the file looked like, we can recover that later on. So I think the other thing that's worth noting is all of the disks are encrypted at rest. So your files are encrypted. So we can't just go in and make copies of your files and look at them. So that's part of our security. We've tried to make it hard for ourselves to access any of the data. So we can't actually go snooping your data.
Thank you, Peter. We do have other questions in the chat, but I might save those because they're more general until your demo is finished.
Okay. So about the only thing I haven't done here is an egress request. I might not show you an egress request. It's basically the same thing in reverse. Right. So what I'll do is come in here and just very quickly show you what that looks like. If I come to egress requests, same deal. I can create an egress request. I give it a name. What that does for me on the desktop back here is it actually, if I go to documents, you'll see there's an egress folder here. It'll create a matching folder in here. You copy, not move, copy your files into that folder, because once you submit the request, that whole folder gets picked up and moved. So if that request gets rejected, those files are gone forever, right? If it gets approved, on the other hand, what happens here is I'm then able to download the files. So it zips up all the files in your egress request that have been approved and makes them as a bundle that you can then come here, and this is how you get stuff out. So I'm just kind of shortcutting the fact that it'll take 5 minutes to show, and we've only got about 10 minutes left.
Peter, I might just stop you there if that's okay, because I'm just aware we've got another 10 minutes of the session, and I'm sure there's a few questions. So that was a really interesting presentation, and it's good to see it actually demonstrated live as well. I mean, it was a very brave thing to do, because it's always I've done this before, and it's great that it's worked.
Right.
And yeah, so I just want to open this up to the floor. Have people got any more questions on KeyPoint for Peter? Or
Roger,
TR generally, actually.
Roger, there were 2 questions in the chat prior to the ones that I asked. And so, David, if you're here, and Frankie, did you want to ask your questions? And then we'll go over to Vibhasha and Kerry.
Sure, I'm here. The first question I had was when you were logging in to the platform initially, it had a message that says, "We don't know you." And then it was you had to wait for 10 seconds for it to actually talk to AAF and figure out that you actually have access. Was that an intentional UI UX decision to say that instead of, we're trying to verify you?
So
Please wait.
initially it was just that was the initial build for, if it says, I don't know who you are, it says, I don't know who you are, right? And I'm not letting you in until I work out who you are. The newer version of our interface doesn't do that. So you don't get the I don't know you. And the reason that we've changed that is that people will go, and you can see me here, they'll go, oh, it didn't work. And they go,
Yeah.
bang, and they hit reload.
Exactly. Yeah.
So for our new interface version, that dialogue is different.
Okay.
Don't get the you're unauthorized.
Mm.
You get we're verifying.
Okay. That's good. That's good. The other question I had while I have the microphone, the virtual microphone, I had the question on capturing the DOI. You mentioned when you're creating a data set, there's a field to capture a DOI. Is that actually used somewhere in the workflow or reporting or anything like it, or is it just say for record keeping?
It's essentially saved for record keeping. So we capture that and associate it, and then that's available to the Vault manager. So if someone wants to cite the data set in their research, they can then make it available, right? So it's just saying that this data set has this DOI and it's captured, so you know that people who've accessed that data set can reference that DOI. Likewise, if I'm creating I didn't do it, but I'll come in here. Likewise, if you're creating a research activity, which I won't do, I'll just show you the dialogue. We've also got the option to capture a research activity ID.
Right.
You can capture the RAID.
Fantastic. Thanks, Peter.
Frankie, did you want to ask your question?
Thank you. Yes. Hi, Peter. Frankie here. I was just wondering about the 30-second lockout that you inadvertently demonstrated on the system. I was just wondering, is that well, first of all, it made me think that from a user experience, there's the potential for that to be rather frantic. I guess I thought 30 seconds was a little brief. But is that a deliberate security design? Is 30 seconds a sort of standard approach to MFA that's in use?
So for us, that was. I think one of the other things that's worth noting here is that we're actually changing that mechanism at the moment. So we're moving away from the interface that you saw to a different platform called KeyCloak. And so our login process will be slightly different. And the MFA won't be quite as the MFA timeout won't be quite as brutal. Because we will be going away from using what you saw, which was Chris Cloud, to a different platform for that part of the authentication and user management.
All right, thank you.
Babasha, I think your question was next.
Yeah, I just wanted confirmation on the internet restrictions in the researcher's desktop. So if there's stats packages that require internet such as R, will they work? And yet the researcher will not be able to access email or the internet browser?
Correct. Right.
Okay.
So the way we do that is that if you have particular packages that you want for R or Python, at Vault creation, this doesn't seem to work this way, by the way. At Vault creation time, when you're asking for a Vault, we go, hey, what additional packages do you want for R or Python or whatever it happens to be? And give us a list. And when we build the Vault, we'll put those into the package repository that's visible on the virtual desktop. Generally, what happens is people will not give you that list. They'll get a virtual desktop. They'll go, I want, dplyrs or ggplot or whatever it happens to be. I'll just install it. No, you can't get off to Crane, right? So it's not going to let you. So then you have to request it, and we then add that to the VDI package image. So you can request additional packages. We will install them into the package repository for you to make it available on those desktops. So if you have a list up the front, then that's worth doing up front. So I'm waiting for the next question, which is, but what about packages that have to go off and fetch stuff from the web? They're a special case. They require a little bit of extra effort. We can create limited holes to allow you to do that, but we don't like doing that. If you really, really need it, then it means that as a vault, the vault steward needs to approve that to say, yes, we're willing to reduce the security of our vault to allow this traffic, right? So it's doable, but
Okay.
we discourage it.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I'm on mute. I'm talking to myself here. Does that include RStudio?
So we can run RStudio. You can certainly fire up RStudio. We've got that installed by default.
Right.
But yeah, you can't just go into RStudio and go, I'm going to search for a package and install it, because that requires RStudio to go fetch something from Crane. So instead, you ask us for those packages and we make them available.
Cool. Kerry, thank you for being so patient. You can go ahead and ask your question, and then we'll take a final question from Alexis.
Thank you. I have many questions. It's an excellent demo and an excellent product, so I'll restrain myself. My question at the moment, Peter, is, okay, so you've got the ingress and egress controls to provide that manual review. What happens if, you know, human error and some data manages to get into the vault that shouldn't be there? So say we're working on 5 sets of medical research data and inadvertently one of those is incorrect. Are there sort of quarantine processes and cleanup things that are in place?
Yeah, so if you're
quite technical.
Yeah, so from a governance perspective, that's done largely by the people in the vault. So the vault steward would set out rules that say for the vault, for the ingress reviewers and egress reviewers, these are the things you need to look for. This is what should be allowed in. This is what should not be allowed in. And they're checking for that. If something does inadvertently get in, via as a data set from the vault manager, they can disconnect the data set from all the different research activities, which removes visibility immediately. And they can suspend those particular data sets as well. So that really locks it down. So you can then go through and look at it and go, should this be visible or not? So you effectively are quarantining it manually. Someone's coming in and going, that shouldn't be there, turn it off, and you can turn it off. You also have the option to delete it, right? So you can come back and go delete that data set and it will delete it. But that's all of that's logged as well. So that's all captured in the audit system. So you can see that data set's brought in, it was connected, where it was connected, when it was connected, when it was disconnected, when it was suspended or deleted or reinstated. So all of that's trackable.
Right, Alexis? Oh, sorry, Kerry.
Oh, go ahead, Jude. Go ahead.
Alexis, you had a question.
Yeah, I just a simple one. Is there a cost to the user or their institutions?
So it depends on how you want to do this. So obviously there's a cost for us to provide a vault. So we largely work on resource cost. So we're a not-for-profit, as I said at the beginning. We're not here to gouge the universities for huge bags of money. You can throw huge bags of money at us if you want, but but no, we effectively work at cost plus a teeny little bit for maintenance and ongoing development. Some institutions are then trying to pass that cost on to researchers, but we don't do that, right? So we just charge the base rate for a vault to the people who've requested the vault. And so depending on your status, for a ballpark figure, the vault runs around $30,000 per year for a basic vault. You can change the number of VDIs, you can make them bigger, you can add more memory, you can add more disk space, you can add GPUs, you can do all of those things. I think one of the other things that sets us apart, our licensing doesn't bill you for data sets, doesn't bill you for the number of people that you put in the vault, doesn't bill you for the number of research questions you're asking. These are all things that other platforms are doing, right? They're billing you for all those things. So they're trying to find, they'll go, we'll make our base thing really cheap, and then for every little bit you want to add, we're going to bill you. We don't do that. You go, here's your one upfront fee. If you want additional resources, you pay for those resources. But otherwise, data sets, people, research questions, all those things are included in the base price.
Yeah, can I just clarify? So the model you're thinking of is basically that an institution would have a KeyPoint vault, and we could bring in and out researchers or collaborators as necessary over time.
So this is a multi-pronged answer.
Sorry.
No, this is good. I think it's good. We've designed it so that you can either use a vault like a program, so you can have a program of work where each research activity is a project, or you can use a vault as a project, and then the research activities are different research questions within the project. So you can do either. Having said that, if you use it as a program, you're invariably going to end up having to get more desktops, more disk space, right? So you'll have to pay extra to get to accommodate the larger group of people. The other thing is that you've now got potentially a small number of people as those delegates that are able to see lots of data sets that you might not want. So depending on how you want to restrict visibility of the data sets, you're either looking at a vault for a project, or a vault for a program of work, or a vault for an institution.
Okay, Peter, we're at time, so we're just going to look a minute over, actually. So thank you very much for that very interesting demonstration, as I said earlier. And if people have additional questions, they're free to contact you, are they, or QCIF?
Absolutely. I have no problem answering questions. If you actually want further demonstration or additional detail, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to run demos for people. That's not a problem.
Excellent. Well, thank you once again. And just a plug for Unlock, which is our community of practice. You can subscribe to our mailing list on the ARDC website. And if you've got suggestions for things that you're interested in hearing about next year related to secure research or trusted research environments, please feel welcome to send them to myself at the ARDC, or the ARDC generic email address, or PHRN for that matter, if you want to address the questions to PHRN. So thank you everybody for attending, and thank you, Peter, once again for the very interesting talk and demonstration.
Roger, just to say as well that I will happily share the recording as well once I've cleaned it up. And David, I've asked that question as well, so I hear you.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.